All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. On today, I break down the only two paths a customer can take when experiencing you or interacting with you in your business, whether it's in marketing, sales, delivery. And I also share in this podcast a couple of case studies from the last week of where the data was actually lying. And the reason that people weren't making sales and weren't making conversions was not because of the data, not because of the offer, but not understanding these two paths and how to fix them. So this one is short, to the point, with a couple clear takeaways and things to focus on. And so without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mine is Yours Show. And today we're going to be talking about the two customer journeys that happen at the same exact time. And there's the customer journey that you think people are going through. And then there's the experience that they're actually having, which is the customer journey that dictates the results that they get, your ability to get retention, referrals, save the relationship, and get revenue. And I'm going to be actually sharing an example in today's podcast because in the last week, I've been on 3 different phone calls, one with a giant physical products company, one with a coaching company who helps people with challenges, onboarding, and then another person who had a lead magnet that was using their data to make decisions, but the data was lying because the data had nothing to do with why people weren't getting results, right? And so when I talk about this, when I talk about customer journey, the number one thing I want to acknowledge is that I think the word itself, nobody really understands what it means. We think it's like, oh, they bought a product, here's what we're going to give them. Or they're signing up for a service, here's the steps that they're going to follow. But a customer journey is not only a logical journey, thinking through the steps that somebody takes, it's also an emotional based journey that they're feeling their way through, being able to commit, being able to follow the steps and take action. And then the third one is there's a relationship journey where in this journey, they're building a relationship with us as a brand or us as a business, or even our co-coaches, our staff, and our team. And all 3 of them are taking a journey at the same exact time. And so I did a post about this and I had a conversation and I said, you might be lying to your customers, but the truth is we all might be, and it might not be intentional. And even in that bucket, it's having a massive, massive impact because there's those 2 paths or those 2 customer journeys that people take in your ecosystem. And most people, myself included, who used to do this, accidentally ignore the most impactful and profitable one. And this is the one that's responsible for clients getting better results, have them stick around for more renewals, and them referring more people to your business. And I'm going to lead the cart with the horse on this one a little bit. This podcast, this episode might be a reminder of the basics or might feel so simple that it's not a big deal, but it is a massive deal. And I will tell you why in a minute. Because on top of understanding these 2 paths that take place, the second one that's ignored, it has the biggest positive impact on our businesses, whether you're a physical products company or a coach or a consultant, because it increases our capacity to scale or serve more without having to hire more staff, build complicated systems or processes, or feeling burnt out in the process. And so I'm going to get into this, but first I want to give you an anecdote and I want to share these 2 different experiences. So experience number 1, physical products brand. Experience number 2, coaching, consulting, courses, challenges. Physical products brand, incredible product. The success of the product comes down to people's ability to take it consistently and then continue to build a habit with it. And in this company, the product is incredible. The unboxing experience is incredible. The customer journey has the ability to be incredible. But what was happening is that people were coming in and then they weren't being educated about the process. So we were like, hey, they know what to do. They know how to open the box. They know when to take this and how to set reminders. And then the data was being used to say, oh, something's broken in our ecosystem. We need to fix this. We need to find more people with ads. We need to try to hire another customer service person to be able to fight this to see if we can retain the customers. And I came in and in an hour, we found the holes. And the holes were we were making a lot of assumptions that people knew, that they knew how to take it, they knew when to take it, they knew how to build a habit. And because of that, the data was showing that the product wasn't working and they were only sticking around for a couple of months instead of the idea, which was like 12 months. And they had been bouncing their head off the wall, trying to figure out, like, how are we going to scale this? We're losing money. We're losing money on the acquisition because they're not staying. We're spending more on acquiring customers, but now we need to find the right customers. And the truth is that they had the right customers, but the customers weren't taking a logical path. They were having an emotional path and a relationship path. And we forget that when somebody comes into our ecosystem, they're not the person to have the results that we're offering them, because that's why they're with us. And it's easy to think about this like a personal trainer, right? I can hand you the workouts on a piece of paper. I can hand you the sets and reps, but it doesn't mean you have the habits, the behaviors, or the know-how to be able to execute those and get the results. So then it leads to frustration. It leads to overwhelm. And then, like, I can't do this. This doesn't work. And then they blame the company. And on the coach, consultant, physical product coaching side, I have a client that runs challenges and another client that uses this lead magnet. And in both buckets, for the last couple of months, they've been increasing their ad spend and trying to figure out why. And in this one case, we had 250 people sign up for the challenge, but only 10 to 15 people were showing up for the calls. And then of those 10 to 15 people, only a couple were buying, even though it was a no-brainer and they all loved it. Everybody said yes. But there was this giant gap between people showing interest and then people actually getting on the calls to get the results and to build their business. And in both of these instances, what was happening is that there's the path that we thought people were taking, right? They got the email, they got to log into the portal. We sent them the video. They know what to do. They know the schedule. They know when the calls are. They're checking their inbox. And there were decisions being made on data, increasing ad spend, increasing retargeting, spending more and more money in that paid media bucket. And it wasn't leading to more results. It was actually making the hole bigger. And so the first thing that I looked at, and the first thing that I always look at when I go into these things, is what is it like to go through that experience as a consumer? And one of my scripture statements on this, and I want you to write this down and remember this, is if you wouldn't go through your onboarding sequence, your lead magnet, your fulfillment sequence, or your sales sequence, and follow the steps to get the ideal result, neither will your customers. And what was happening in both cases were the three core mistakes that I teach in Customer Journey. And we will link that podcast because I want to give it its full entirety in the show notes of this, right? It's the three biggest mistakes. Mistake number one is the zone of doubt. Mistake number two is the inverse journey. And mistake number three is the drown the journey. So the zone of doubt is when somebody makes an emotional-based decision that the next step is either not there, or it's confusing or overwhelming, and it prevents them from taking action, leading to reactance. The second one is the inverse journey, where we make the assumption that because they gave us their attention, they gave us their money, they gave us their email, that they know that they're the person and know the path to follow. But instead, we talk about ourselves, our results, and we end up making a lot of assumptions, forgetting how far removed our customers are in their before state from where we're standing in the after state. And then number three, which is the one that both were doing, is the drown the journey, where somebody said yes, either to a challenge, a product, a credit card, a lead magnet. And we're like, all right, you're in. Here's the next 17 steps to follow. And then they were getting overwhelmed and they weren't following any of them. And the reason this is such a big problem is because when you look at those things, right, let's take the third one, for example, the drown the journey. In order for this person to be effective, these people needed to come in and they needed to join a Facebook group, and they needed to be in that Facebook group to be able to receive the workbook and the challenges and the parts and pieces that came with the challenge, the live calls, the support. But only about 20% were joining that Facebook group. And everyone's like, oh my God, there's something wrong with the challenge. There's something wrong with the content. Nobody wants it. When in actuality, we started diving in and looking at the details. And of all the emails that were sent, only about 20% of people had actually opened the email. And of those 20%, only about half of them had actually joined the Facebook group, but they were only given one option to join. They had it on the thank you page and they had it in the email, but people weren't clicking through and getting it. And so then by the time the challenge started, about 70+% of the people that wanted it, that signed up, that clicked on the ad, that raised their hand organically, never got into the challenge because they were in the zone of doubt. And when I say this to customers, when I say this to clients, I say our message is only as effective as the recipient's ability to hear it, understand it, and implement it without us. And leadership is saying the same thing as many times as required till the last person gets it. And so if I own a restaurant and you come in and you ask me to eat dinner, you can't order dinner until I seat you at the table. And so if I start walking you to the table and you go to the restroom and then you get distracted, but I don't show you where your table is, and I just let you figure it out, you're never going to sit at that table to be able to order your meal. Just like if we own a brick and mortar store and you come in to buy a product, as much as you'd like me to ring you out on the shelf in the back of the store, you can't get that product until you come up to the cash register. And I might need to help guide you to the cash register if you can't find it or if you don't know where it is. And that just reminds me of like the old brick and mortar malls where like you'd go to Sears or JC Penney and they had like cash registers spread throughout the store, and they would be in like the clothing section and the bedding section, but some of them were open and some of them weren't. You go up like, can I check out here? And they're like, nope, go to that one. And that one's closed, right? Our job is to make sure that we understand the experience that somebody's taking. And so logically, it's really, really easy to understand the first path. Okay, you signed up for my challenge, you bought my product. Here's exactly what to do one time, go do it. Forgetting that not everybody's going to do it. And truthfully, most people won't the first time because life gets in the way, their kids get in the way, they have a bad meeting or bad business, and then they never get indoctrinated right or created the experience that gives them the possibility of results in onboarding. And onboarding applies to both your lead magnets, it applies to your physical products, it applies to your digital products, your coaching, but then they end up resenting or blaming us, saying that it doesn't work. And so the reason I wanted to presence this is because I went through every single one of these situations and scenarios. And the first thing that I did is I went through it as a consumer. And I started going through and I started recognizing little things that were creating an inconsistent or an incongruent experience. I went to click on a video and the video didn't play, but 80% of the information was in the video and it wasn't matched on the page below. I got the email and I started clicking on the links, and one of the links was broken, leading to the group. I went through with the physical products brand and I started reading the emails that came with it while having the product in front of me. And there was contradictory information. The email said something different than the box said, and it let me feel confused. And so it's really, really important to understand the journeys that people are taking to ensure that we create a consistent and congruent experience. And in the lens of business and time that we're in right now, people are more and more inclined to have long-term relationships with brands that they trust, with brands that they love, and brands that they support. And so when we start to really think about this, we have to understand that there's two journeys happening simultaneously. So the first path is the path that we believe we're providing as an experience. So here's my product, here's the boxes, here's the emails, here's my course, here's the 7 steps that you need to follow, right? But then the second path is the actual experience that they're having. And this is the path that lays out the plan for them to become the person with the beliefs, the habits, the behaviors, and the thinking to use or implement your product or service to get them from where they are to where they want to go. And it's only when both of those experiences match that you'll unlock the biggest benefits. That's what we actually call a customer journey. But what ends up happening is when they don't, it feels like the promise we made in our marketing doesn't match the delivery, and it leads to people resenting us. And then this creates the perception in our client's mind that our offer doesn't work, our lead magnet doesn't work, or it's broken or ineffective. When in actuality, the only challenge is that there's inconsistency and incongruency between the experience that was promised and the actual experience that they're having right now. And so real customer journeys, like being on the receiving end, require us to take off the hat of being the business, being the product, being the service, and understanding what it's like to go through as a consumer. And so the first step that I always take, and I'm saying this to every single one of you to go do this right now in your product, in your lead magnets, in the delivery, and if you're a physical product, like sign up for the list and actually read your emails and see if they match. And if you're a coach, go through your onboarding. If you're giving out a lead magnet, go through and see if it makes sense. Because what it's going to allow you to do is understand that the people that we're helping and supporting are coming to us to learn. They don't know the things that we know. They don't have the same beliefs. They don't have the same mindset, and they haven't created it. They're coming in fresh as a consumer, and they're like, help me get to my table. Explain to me what this menu is of appetizers, entrees, and desserts. Let me know what your recommendations are. What should I start with? And we have to go through and consume it as a consumer to be able to create this experience. And so the reason I'm sharing this is because we just went through a funnel, quote unquote funnel, my favorite word. And we were like bouncing our heads off the wall. We were like really upset, frustrated. This has been stuck for months and months and months. And then I jump on a call for the first time and we start going through it, and we realized that we had spent 3 to 4 months making changes, not me, but this was before I came in, 3 to 4 months making changes that were actually making the problem worse because we didn't follow the first steps of going through as a consumer. But once we started to follow those steps, and I taught them the customer journey principles, like the same thing I do. Step 1 is I go through as a consumer. Step 2 is I make sure I hit the required wickets for communication empowerment. And number 3 is I lay out a journey that gives everybody the best chance of being successful, to be able to get into a Facebook group, to be able to watch the video. Well, what if nobody watches the video? What if people don't like watching videos? Well, does our supportive text underneath still lay out the same details? Is the information that they're seeing on the thank you page match the information they're getting in their first email? Is it driving them to the same place, or is it creating confusion and overwhelm? And we went through and we audited everything, and we realized that the data was lying. And the data was lying because the data said the challenge didn't work and the course didn't work and the lead magnet didn't work. But the truth is they were falling into those 3 mistakes and never actually getting into the content, never actually getting into the lead magnet or getting into the course. And that's where we have to make sure that these experiences that they're having, the path that we assume that they're taking, and then the actual path that they're taking, which is the one that they, of course, are going to think through, right? Did I hit the wickets? Did I check the box? The way that they're going to feel while going through that process about themselves. And then the deeper one is the way that they feel about us as a brand, as a coach, as a consultant, as a service provider, because of those 2 experiences above. And we need to ensure a seamless delivery, which is what customer journey actually is. And so I'm going to give you some tangible nuggets to take away for this one, because this one is really, really important. And there is no customer journey that's ever finished, which means just because you went through and audited it 6 months ago or 3 months ago doesn't mean it's the same. And so step number 1 is you have to go through yours just like you're a consumer. Step number 2 is you need to have a checklist. We call them desktop procedures. Before anything is ever launched publicly to the world, does the links go to the right place? Is it matched throughout the experience? Do I say the thing in the video that's also on the thank you page that matches what's in that first email? Did I have the URLs right? Am I making it clearly understandable and digestible that they can do without me? And you need to have a checklist so that you can ensure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, to make sure that they're having the best chance of an experience to get through that ecosystem. And so step number 1 is go through it as a consumer. Step number 2 is have that checklist. And then I think the third most important step is to find somebody that you know, like, and trust that isn't in your company, and have them go through it as a consumer, and to be radically honest with you. This was confusing. This was overwhelming. This didn't make sense. That link I clicked didn't get to where you said it was going to get. Why did I have to go through 6 steps just to get into the Facebook group? I was really stuck at this point and I didn't know what to do. And you need to make sure that the experience that you're curating gives everybody the best chance of success with as minimum amount of resistance as possible to get them to where you want to go. And that is what customer journey is. And the reason I'm sharing this is because in all 3 cases, and I mean all 3 cases last week, when we applied customer journey, the 5-step framework that I always use and teach people, we created a consistent and congruent experience. We made sure that the marketing and messaging matched, no matter whether it was on the thank you page, the email, the text messages that were going out. The amount of results that people started getting started to skyrocket, and the data started to tell an honest story. And this is why I'm so obsessed about customer journey. Like, this is the core of what I do. And so if you want my help with customer journey, just DM me on Instagram. You know how to get a hold of me. Just send me the word scale and we'll jump on. We'll have coffee for 15 minutes, or you come to one of our events. But I think by the time you hear this, this event is already passed. So you're going to come to the next one, because that's where you're going to win the game. Winning the game is understanding that there's two paths that are happening at the same time. The path that we think they're experiencing, and then the actual path that they're experiencing underneath it. And it's only when the two of them together are consistent and congruent that you have the ability to scale. You have the ability to reduce the back and forth and overhead, right? I have so many clients jumping on calls and they keep asking me, where's the onboarding information? I have people jumping on and they're like, I didn't watch the prerequisite videos. All of those things are customer journey issues. And when people try to scale those, you end up scaling the amount of problems that you have, leading to burnout, resentment, overwhelm, and all those different pieces. And so it was on my heart to share. This was kind of an off the cuff show because I've walked this so many times in the last week and I wanted to share it with you. So we're going to wrap the show there. If you have any customer journey questions or anything that you need, just shoot me a DM on Instagram and say the word scale or customer journey, and I'll know what you mean. I would go watch the podcast or listen to the podcast on the 3 big mistakes that everybody makes that are linked in the show. And at minimum, I would go through your entire ecosystem as a consumer and make sure that you've created a seamless, consistent, and congruent experience that isn't confusing, that isn't overwhelming, that gives everybody the best chance to be able to get to the result that you're promising. So I love you to pieces. I appreciate you. I'm going to wrap the show. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.